watching, for hanging on a little bit. This is and we're gonna officially start right now. My name is Russell Up with the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. This is our official live stream that we put on every week, where we talk to various gaming individuals and um, we looked at various games throughout the industry. And this week we're very fortunate enough to have Zeke with us. He created the game Softbody, and funny enough, I came across this game a little bit through other live streamers, other Let's Players, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to speak with you, Zeke, about the game. So, hello, and how are you doing?
Great, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's doing pretty well. I'm a little bit ahead of you guys right now. It's like 10 p.m. and I'm out a little bit outside of Brussels, Belgium, living out here while my wife is finishing like a postdoc. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, but I'm glad to be able to do this. Thanks for having
Awesome.
me.
Right now we're playing the game in the background from our intern John. But for anyone that doesn't know the game, could you describe what it is a little bit?
Okay, so Softbody is a well, I've since I released the game, I've like revamped my pitch. I used to describe it as kind of like a meditative action puzzle game, but now I call it a difficult action puzzle game with a meditative aesthetic and mood to it. In the game, you control these two beautiful gooey snakes at the same time, and what you do is you paint this world with your body, and you do other small objectives while and when you finish painting the world, it changes and new obstacles appear and new challenges arrive. So it's kind of like constantly mutating, and the rules are kind of slowly being introduced. But I think if someone most of the time when people just uh, see the game for the first time without any introduction, they're so confused. Because it's an abstract game. But on the other hand, it has this kind of like uh, slow introduction to all like the mechanics, so that people, they're kind of and they're mostly heuristic, so trial and error. When people like, I give them like one or two things they can really do, and so they have to figure it out by themselves when they're trying to play this game.
Yeah, definitely on a gameplay level. I'm very curious to see what your inspirations were for, I'm sure like Shumps were some of them, but what else were you inspired by?
So, yeah, this question comes up a lot, and so I mean, there's definitely the quick restart thing. Like I really like Terry Cavanagh's games, like VVV, or V for short. So that I played that, like 6 years ago, and that quick restart and the like short levels and just kind of the ambition of it. I really, really sort of stuck with me. Not directly, but just as an idea of like, oh yeah, people can make these kind of games.
Mm.
Another shmup is it's probably got my favorite name. It's Strikers 1945 2. So that it's a shmup I played in college a fair bit. They had an arcade cabinet, and it's really fast, and I really like speed. It just felt good to move around. It was had a lot of like really good animation in it, and so it had this kind of like smooth flowing vibe to it.
Mm.
And then maybe one of the more surprising ones is actually Quake 2. Quake
Mm.
2 is a huge game for me because I played Doom and I played Wolfenstein and I played even, like Quake,
Mm.
and it was just mouse and keyboard, but your vertical was locked, so there was no mouse look yet.
Mm.
And playing Quake 2, it was like really fast, and then it had this weird thing that like it took me forever to figure out how to use mouse look. And I think people who've never played haven't played video games that much. You put them in front of a first person shooter, and they get really lost with that camera.
Mm.
And I was too, but I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoy like having to be put into a position. Like I really enjoyed being put in this position where there was this thing I thought was impossible, and then of course after a few weeks I got really good at it and
Mm.
kept playing and kept playing. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else off the top of my head. I mean, of course, there's Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really loved that game when I first played it, and I beat it in just like one sitting,
Mm-hmm.
and then I haven't touched it since. I was like, oh, this is really good. I could steal so many ideas from it, so I just kind of pushed it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about
Um,
your background. What is your game development background? Have you worked on other games before, or is this your first big game?
this is my first big game. I went to school for music undergrad, and I got a degree in composition, and so I worked on worked as a musician for a while. I did like chamber music, and I composed and wrote the words for a number of like for like three or four experimental operas,
Mm,
like very kind of. I mean, some of it was quite strange and had a lot of experimental stuff to it, but some of it was pretty straightforward as well.
mm,
I like to mix those two things, like the surreal and the sort of just expected. Um, and then I spent a couple of years doing that, like 8 years, and then I went back and got a degree. I got an MFA in game design from the NYU Game Center in New
mm,
York City. Yeah, so New York University. And it was something I really wanted to do even when I was doing music.
mm.
Like I had this really strange experience in the middle of like composing and putting on this first opera. I got a really, really sick, like a really terrible flu. And
Mm,
just one, and you know, I don't know if you like had this experience with flu,
mm.
like where you have these crazy fever dreams, you know, and all this sort of stuff. And then like, you know, you just kind of like I kept having all these fever dreams about like actress, and like on one end, then like it was in my dream there was Richard Wagner, who's like you know terrifying opera composer,
Mhm.
was trying to tell me that like I should be making video games, and so I like kind of took it to heart and I thought about it a fair bit, and yeah, I spent like 8 years after that still working in music, but you know.
That's interesting though. So you definitely have a bigger musical background, which I think really plays a big part in this game. Did you compose the music by yourself? Did you do everything by yourself in this game?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did all the music and sounds, and yeah, I pretty much did everything. There is a little bit of art, like the box art was done by a friend, Stephen Lawrence Clark.
Mm,
You know, and I got a lot of feedback from people too. You know, I continually play tested it and gave it to people I respected. So, I mean, on one hand, it's like I programmed it and designed it by myself, but you know, if I was just a lonely guy out in a cabin who never, you know, like being a hermit,
uh-huh.
I don't think it would. I don't think I'd be able to do it. You know, there's
Mm-hmm.
no way I'd be able to accomplish, like, put that out.
No, definitely understood. Talking about a little bit about Stephen Clark, definitely how was that collaboration? Because the enemies look very differently than they do in the game versus, in the concept art, I guess, a little bit.
Well, the way we talked about it was, I wanted to do something where the like, have you the Super Metroid instruction manual? Like,
Mm,
you're playing Super Metroid, and there's all these like small little pixelated characters that are like you know 32 to 64 pixels high, and they can only have so much detail in it. And then you go in the instruction manual, and the characters look so cool and so awesome. So I was like, you know what, we should do something like that.
yeah.
Like we should make a game. I would want to make an instruction manual or box art that is like those old Atari box art
Mm,
things, or like, or even for something like what are those text-based adventure games, like a Mine for Forever Voyaging. It's
mm,
like has this really intense, amazing like box art, and yet you know you're still just typing in the console.
mm-hmm.
So that was a direct inspiration for that, and I just kind of let him do whatever he wants because he's amazing, and like
Mm,
he always surprises me, but I always know it's going to be like something I love, you
mm.
know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I've worked with him on a number of like short games before, and I think we'll probably continue collaborating in the future.
Very cool. Going back a little bit more to this game, I'm just curious where you got the combination of both the meditative experience and, this bullet hell kind of idea from, like, in terms of, obviously we talked about the inspirations, but the meditative
Mhm.
part is very interesting to me.
Okay, so when I first started working on the game, I didn't have like a clue of where I was going to start. You know, I didn't have a clue that I was going to like start where I was and have a clue where I was going to end. It really came out of nowhere. I was working on a pretty ambitious narrative game, and I just felt like, you know, it's going to be 6 months before I know if this works. Like, I'm going to have made all this art and all this, like, done all this writing, and I just really didn't have it. I really didn't have it in me to do something like that. And then 6 months later, no, it was bad. So I wanted something I could play and kind of immediately tell if it was good or not. And I tried to. So what I did is I came home and I was in this bad mood, and I was like, okay, I got to do something besides work on this narrative game. And so I tried to clone Hotline Miami
Mm.
in, like 5 minutes, and it was really bad feeling, and it looked really bad. And I was like, okay, well, why don't I just work on making it look good and make it feel good? And then like an hour later, I was like had this weird snake moving around. I was like, wow, this is really. I felt like I stumbled on something really amazing.
Hmm.
And so from there, I just kind of trusted that I would be like smart enough to, and yeah, I just trusted that I would figure out how to make this good. And so that was kind of my original anchor was like, I'm going to make a game that feels good to move around.
Mm.
Like, despite everything else, like this movement has to stay.
Mm.
And it has to, like, I have to encourage the people to move like that. And then, of course, so I spent a few weeks on this, and then I had like tried out a bunch of designs. Like I tried to make it like a Metroidvania. I tried to make it,
Mm.
a weird score chasing game. And then finally one day I was like, well, okay, why don't I try this painting thing? And that was kind of cool. And so I had some sound effects just sitting around. I was like, why don't I do that? And so that was the first sounds I put in the game.
Mm.
And that was immediately, it was like something clicked. And I knew that like I had something I could work with. Whenever there was sound in the game, whenever I put sound in a game, it's always kind of like cemented it. For some reason, I waited. Usually, I put sound in like a piece of music in immediately,
Mm.
and I just kind of work everything around that. Like,
Mm.
because there's all this small stuff when you're designing a game. There's all these like unknowns, like
Mm.
movement, how fast you want the movement to be. Like, do you want the jump to be floaty or do you want it to be really tight and
Mm.
like squishy or something?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of like ideas to have, and usually you'll just steal it from Mario or you'll steal it from that. But I find that if you have a piece of music, like luckily I'm a composer, so I do have like a lot of music just kind of sitting around and where I
Mm.
can put something together really quickly. Usually I'll put a piece of music in there, and if I'm really feeling it, I'm really like kind of jiving with it to some degree, then I'll just leave that going. It'll be on loop, and I'll work everything, the feel and the kind of mechanics to kind of coincide and work with that.
Mm.
And that's kind of how the game has worked from day one. It was like I just had a few small things that I thought, these can't ever go away. And one was like the kind of meditative, weird, abstract music and sound. And
Mm.
the other thing was just that kind of like smooth motion. Like it's really a game about like, in my mind, it's a game about game feel, about
Mm.
how it like, um, well, it's kind of a hard thing to describe, but yeah, how it feels to move these like bodies around in space. And so, yeah, I guess that's a long intro to where the idea came from.
No,
But
it's very interesting. It definitely seems like two of your big inspirations are not only these fun retro games like, Metroid to the Shumps, but also that music plays definitely a big role in terms of your game design.
yeah, with music, I spent so much time in my life and so much, and I've studied with some musicians who I really admire and who've done some good work. And so I think in my work, it's like I just would feel so horrible if I gave up on that, and
Hmm.
just made so that it's not necessarily just guilt. It's like I use something that's like I know I have like I can rely on, the kind of like bang for buck emotional, uh, bang for your buck emotional response with music is kind of like super strong. You just put one little piece of music,
Mm.
and if you just kind of play around that, like you can make a huge splash.
Mm. With the soundtrack itself too, inspiration-wise, who are your inspirations, both for this game and just in general?
So for the music, I made a big playlist. Give me 2 seconds. I'll bring it up
Sure.
because um, so I like a lot of like experimental mostly American music, but also a lot of like 19th century romantic stuff. So there's stuff like John Cage is a very big influence on me, and then some electronic musicians from the like mid 20th century, like Elena Radigu and Oliver Messiaen. Uh, There is a few albums by this guy, One O Tricks Point Never, and
Mm,
Todd Terje, and then of course like Wagner and Gustav Mahler.
mm.
Like these are all big influences as far as that. And I have a playlist. I'll post it on my Twitter
Sure.
again after this.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, and it's not so much like the harmony or like the structure of the pieces themselves, but maybe more so of like the timbre,
mm,
like meaning like the tone of, it uses a lot of like low brass and a lot of like clarinets and stuff. So it has a very similar sound and like sparse percussion.
mm. Also, with the game, it seems like as you progress, the musical like complexities, it definitely grows on you. Is that kind of true, or is that how you built the game a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I wish I would have pushed it a lot more. I'm proud of it, and I think it is good. Like I didn't let them, I didn't let the music just like get in the way. I didn't want it to detract. I found it anytime I tried to make it very, very complicated.
Mm,
Some of the levels you would have to repeat over and over and over, and it was just like, okay, well, this was nice the first time, but the 20th time it just becomes like insanely grating.
mhm,
Um, I think for the next thing I do though, I do want to just like spend a lot more time just
mhm,
pushing music in. But I say that now, but actually a few days ago I did go back through all the like sound effects that I have in the game and looked at some of the like raw materials from where those sound effects came from, and there's like there's a lot more than I thought.
yeah.
I did. It, it's just like I never sat down and worked on music for like days straight. It was always this sort of thing where I needed something or I needed to take like a short break because I
Mhm.
was frustrated with programming. So it was good.
Is there anything you cut out of the game that you wish you put in that maybe will be in a future game?
If I make a sequel to this game, I know exactly. Like I had a revelation like 2 weeks before I was supposed to like ship it for QA to Sony for QA to Sony
Hmm.
for the PS4 build. And I just thought of like a really good mode to make like levels much longer
Mm,
and make them a little bit easier and make like checkpoints that made a lot of sense.
mm,
But yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to be done with this for now. I
mm,
think maybe in a few years I'd be ready to like pick it up again. But no, I feel like I did everything I set out to do.
mm. How long did this game take to develop, by the way?
So from start to finish, 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
So I spent 6 months. 6 months. No, no. I spent about like 9 months working on it part time,
Mm,
and then like after that, the rest of the time was working on it full time.
mm. Um, a curiosity as well. With the game, I haven't completed the whole game yet, but story-wise and things, is there something that you were trying to tell thematically, or was there like a story they were trying to tell as a whole in terms of the game?
Um, yeah, I think there is. I wanted it to have a musical. Give me a moment to gather my thoughts about this.
Yeah,
It's
no
a
worries.
kind of
Yeah.
a loaded question. I wanted it to have kind of an emotional response that like a piece of music would have in that way, like or like maybe like a tone poem from like the 1850s or something, where you put words in front of people and you set these scenes, and then people kind of have to hear it out of the music.
Hmm.
I mean, there are some secrets in there where there are like words that are being said, and like there is a history and an idea behind every character,
Mm.
but I don't necessarily. Uh,
I mean, it
I
goes
don't
back to
necessarily try to say start here and finish there. I
yeah.
guess I am a little. I guess I would be really happy if people would, be more comfortable with like the idea of these like interludes being like very open to interpretation. Very purposefully open to interpretation, and not just shut down as like, well, somebody thinks they're gonna like make me think about art right now. No way.
That's I guess off of that one last question in terms of the game itself is uh, the both the hard mode and the soft game plus modes. Just some thoughts behind creating those different modes for people to play. What was your thinking behind that?
So I with soft mode, it was getting a bit. I was in a bit of a place where I was having a hard time figuring out how I was going to finish it,
Hmm.
and hard game really was the thing that I think was most fun for me to design, and
Hmm.
it was the most inspired. Like as far as like inspired, if you consider inspiration being like just like a quick burst of like rapid energy. So I like the hard game came out of really pushing myself to figure out, I've been saying for a long time that this was a game about, oh, it's about controlling two things at the same time. It's about learning
Hmm.
how to do this very odd thing with your brain and splitting it. And so when I finally came up with the concept of it, and it just kind of cemented everything that was interesting about that movement scheme and of
Hmm.
what I could potentially do with it. And the question was, how was I going to get that in the game without throwing people like through the crazy, with like throwing people crazy? Yeah.
Hmm.
It was just like it used to be in soft game. It was like chapter 1 through 3, you have this ghost body, and then chapter 4 would come along. You had hard game,
Hmm.
and it was going to be this immediate break. And I realized after talking with a lot of people that this is going to be a terrible idea. So I split them into two modes, and I let and this way, I guess it's a little disappointing that people are frightened of hard game. But on the other hand, I guess that's okay. I was expecting that. I expected that people would just be not interested in ever having to split
Hmm.
their mind that much. Yeah, where soft game was very much like trying to just kind of feeling out what was good, what the mechanics could be.
Hmm.
Hard game really was like I would sit down with a pen and paper or like lay down on the floor and trace out motions and try to make my eyes like follow it. And that's how I figured out those puzzles. Like I really was like an analytically like, okay, what is hard about about controlling two things at the same time? Well, if you cross the bodies, there's this thing going on. Well, what happened, or if this guy has to be able to move like wants to be able to like keep a lot of distance, so you force people to like stay close together
Hmm.
or yeah.
Were you
That was
were you surprised by anything in the end when you seen people play the game, respond to the game? Anything that stands out?
I'm not really actually. I've been playtesting for so long. I've seen so many people play it.
Yeah.
I think there's a reaction is the reactions that I've seen before are pretty similar to the ones I've seen when I would demo it. You get some people who like see it and they're like, "Oh, a meditative action game, man, this is gonna be cool," and they're thinking it's gonna be something like Hohokum,
Uh-huh.
and it's gonna be really chill and it's gonna be very easy, and they're immediately like, "Man, this what are you doing? This is not meditative." I'm like, "Well, I don't mean it that meditative that way. Um, but then you would have these kids who come along and they immediately get it and they're really into the difficulty and they uh, just can't put it down. And that's and I've had both reactions, and so I'm not too surprised about what's come out of it.
Yeah, so this game,
There
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, there was a really fun thing on there's a PlayStation 4 community
Mhm.
called like Weird Bizarre Abstract Games that nobody else likes or something. It has
Okay.
like 100 members on
Uh-huh.
it. And like these guys are really like pushing soft body as like their banner game right now. So I'm a little bit surprised that that community's out there.
That's really interesting. But yeah, so this game really is meant for a hardcore audience, it seems like. Is that kind of the takeaway from it?
No, no, no,
Uh,
no. I mean, that is one thing about like in reviews, people say, well, if you're not into difficult games, if you don't like challenging games, like this isn't for you. And the thing is, though, it's like it's not necessarily true. I think it's
mm,
something. I think a lot of reviewers might just be lonely in this fact.
mm,
They haven't seen like 10-year-olds play it over and over again, or
mm,
change the difficulty to make it easier, because
mm,
10-year-olds really don't care about like playing it exactly how the designer wants,
mm,
playing it so that it's like one hit, one kill, like it's supposed to be played.
yeah.
And then a lot of people who don't have an interest in games in general have enjoyed playing it. Like
Mm.
my wife, for example. I mean, I guess that's not the best thing because I mean, she didn't like it. She probably tell me, but she did. She beat the whole game.
Wow.
She beat hard game and soft game, and
Mm,
like was super into it. So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I guess one more question I thought of among all this as well is in terms of you talked a lot about playtesting. Just
Mhm.
how did you get the playtesting done? Was it done with Sony or was it done just with both friends and family of yours?
Yeah, it was mostly like I'd go to. So when I was part of NYU, they had a thing called Playtest Thursdays,
Mm,
and every Thursday at NYU, people would come and play, and so I would get people, just random folks, and tell them to, hey, give it a shot, and I did that for a while, and then when I moved to Belgium, we have dev meetups here, and so I would go and like get there as early as I could and get as many playtesters in.
mm,
And what I was trying to do is, I was testing for a number of things. One is stickiness,
mm,
how long are people going to play it before they just give up and like leave? Another one is, are people learning all the rules and whatnot?
mm,
And so I developed a few techniques. I mean, I guess these probably been in use for a while. Is one is that like I give the game to someone and I don't sit at the shoulder. I don't tell them anything. I go
mm,
like I stand like 10 feet behind them, 20 feet behind them, and so if they're not enjoying the game, they don't feel this responsibility to, they think I don't care.
mm-hmm,
But I'm secretly just kind of like spying on them, being like, oh, where are they messing up? Oh, they keep dying there. They must not know how to do this,
mm,
you know? And so it was a good way of testing whether or not people really wanted to play it.
mm.
Because there is this pressure with play testing that like someone might feel um, someone might feel like it would be rude if they didn't keep playing it.
Mm. No, I understand.
Yeah.
A couple last questions just for you. In terms of what
Sure.
you're gaming right now, it seems like you are a big gamer, both past and present. What's on your gaming list?
What have I been playing? So I just got Overwatch yesterday.
Nice.
I haven't played a shooter like that in so many years. I'm kind of past um, multiplayer online shooters, and then a few of my friends are playing in the States, and then my brother is playing. So this, I don't know, it's just a way of like keeping in touch with them.
Mm.
Um, but man, it's so polished.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Um, I guess I just finished Dark Souls 3.
Mm.
When I went to demo the game at PlayStation Experience
Mm.
last December, they had like a fountain, like the Dark Souls fountain. You could like stick the sword in, and then would have blood squirting around you. So I have that on my refrigerator as well. Yeah, Dark Souls. Yeah, of course, Dark Souls was a big influence on the game. I didn't bring that up, but
Mm.
I mean, it's like everybody right now is like so influenced by the game. It seems.
No,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, actually, the game in its prototyping was called Worms. When I was prototyping it, it was called Worm Souls
Worm
for a
Souls.
couple of weeks. Yeah.
That's
um,
that's brilliant.
what else have I been playing? I don't know. I mean, really haven't had that much time.
Mm.
Like the last couple of months, I've just been hustling to get the game out, and
Yeah.
yeah, every once in a while, I'll let myself play Dark Souls for a couple hours or something.
Speaking about that, I just brought this up as well. The question of the lives in the game, the one
Mhm.
versus three lives. So the game is meant to be played as one life. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how I play it, and that's how I think it's best enjoyed.
Mm,
Um, but the thing was, is kids play it. I've
mm,
I've demoed it for kids, and they enjoy it when they put on 2 or 3 lives.
mm, mm,
And I just demos better for them. And like I was at South by Southwest in March, and I had so many kids who were able to like check out the game,
mm,
and it was for like a 10-year-old, it's like playing the game, a matter of playing a game for like 3 minutes and then giving up, or they would just play the game as long as they wanted to because it wasn't as hard.
mm.
Um, so yeah, that I for a long time I was juggling whether or not I wanted to do that, but yeah, I just figured like people have their own set of values, and they'll go along with it.
Mm.
However they let them navigate that.
That's cool. And finally, just out of curiosity, is about any tips or advice you would give to anyone, kind of, like you, that is thinking about making a game on their own or, trying to develop games. Any suggestions for them?
Yeah, I've got a lot of suggestions. I sent an email to somebody chock full of like things I've kind of gathered. Um, here's one mostly for like people who are just starting out, like if they're are just trying to get into the industry, is like emails. Like if you send an email to someone and they don't reply to you, or immediately, just like you gotta learn how to forget about that.
Mm,
And if they don't respond to you, like don't hold it against them and stuff. It's like it's one of those things you just don't know about until you've like tried it for a lot of time. And then I would suggest, if you can, if you're working by yourself, you should play test the game every week,
mm,
every single week, no matter what. Because I mean, I know this, and yet, like, sometimes it would be a few weeks, and of course, after those few weeks, I'd be like, "This is the worst game ever made.
yeah.
Like, how am I able to develop this full time?" And I'd have all these anxieties,
Hmm,
and then I would go play test it, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, people like it. People like understand what I'm trying to do. I have nothing to worry about." It's just a good way of like getting that out of the system.
mm. And speaking of just making games by yourself, obviously we're seeing great examples from yourself, from Sam Barlow, all these people creating games by themselves. Um, I mean, I probably know the answer from you, but is this a really, great golden age for, auteur game development? Is that, if we're calling it that?
I guess so. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, short answer, yes. I think it's the golden age for video games as we know it. I think maybe in like 20 years, video games will mean something very different,
Mm,
and we'll have a different golden age. Similar to like in music, like sure you have like Beethoven wrote this best kind of symphony,
mm,
and but that became opera, and then that became vaudeville and movies and stuff. So maybe, hopefully, it'll like evolve like that.
mm,
And hopefully, in 20 years from now, like someone will be making a game by themselves, and it'll be completely different than anything I would have ever thought about doing.
mm.
Yet it doesn't completely nullify the work I've been doing.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
the way that like Super Mario Galaxy has not nullified the greatness of like Super Mario World or
mm,
Super Mario 64.
yeah. And what are you working on next? Anything we should be looking forward to from you?
Uh, haven't decided yet. I still have to port the game to Vita and OS X. So
Mm,
I've got like three things up my sleeve, and all of them are like kind of. I think maybe it's time for me to like stop just doing something that's immediately satisfying. Maybe it's time to spend like a couple of months seeing if this prototype,
mm.
will play out, as
Okay.
opposed to yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Zeke, I know it's getting pretty late over there, so thank you so much for your time. Really, really do
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, again, the game is Softbody, which is right now out for the PS4 and Steam, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's on PS4 and Steam, and you
Awesome.
can also get it on itch.io and Humble Store if you're looking for it there.
Very cool. And if anyone wants to follow you, your Twitter handle.
Uh, God, Zeke, Satan. That's one word.
I love
It's a Ween reference. If anybody listens to Ween.
Very cool. Again, thank you so much, Zeke. The archive of this live stream will be up on YouTube early tomorrow. We'll post it out. I'll send it to Zeke as well. Again, thank you, Zeke. Thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for watching.
No problem. Thanks.
All
Take
right,
care.
take care, guys. See you later.